Hey everybody, let's have some fun.
Good morning to you. Do you need another mule skidder down on your new mud run? Hey, hey,
So I thought it'd be a great idea to actually go over some of the fundamentals that we've been talking about. I've used the words perspective and composition a whole bunch, and I was like, you know what? We should probably break those down finally and explain some basic ideas. Once again, I have no idea what the fuck I'm doing, but I think the tricks that I use all the time, the basic shit that I understand, will go a long way to just helping you on your drawing journey. So, it's Drunk Drawing with me, Tat Franklin. Tat Franklin, Tat Franklin, Tat Franklin, Tat Franklin, Tat Franklin, Tat Franklin. The first word is drunk. What we're drinking today is something a little more fun because, you know, fundamentals. So I have strawberry, banana, rum, a little ice, and a little coconut milk. Blend that shit up. I know all of us, our hair is growing out. This drink makes me feel like it's blowing in the wind on a beach. I can smell the salty air. I can feel it, the sun beating down on the skin. So before we dive into composition, I'm thinking perspective. All right, get your drinks in hand and let's have some fun. So I want to start out with perspective. I'm just going to go over 1 point and 2 points perspective. Basically, I'm going to make two panels here. And then I'm going to make two horizon lines. Just cut it right in half. This will be our 1 point. This will be our 2. We're going to start with the 1 point perspective, all right? So what I like to think of is you're looking at anything that's going back in space. Like I have a row of bookshelves right here. Think of the railroad tracks, like dot, 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 dot. When things go back in space, they get closer together. So first I want to find the vanishing point, the point when you become nothing. So I'm going to put a vanishing point right in the middle here. Whoop. All I'm going to do from here now is just make some lines coming out away from it. Now when I grab the black Sharpie and I start to put any objects in here, it's all going to look like it's going back in space. So I'm going to take a black Sharpie now. And let's say we have, I don't know, a really big dog bone here. Now I know following these lines, if I put another dog bone, and I want to make it look like it's going back in space, I'll follow this. And then another one. As they go back, they also get closer together. Now you can fully grid all this out. You can make a grid that like gets tighter, make a full grid. But the idea is that objects are larger here and they follow these lines back into space. The same thing works with a three-dimensional object. Take any basic shape. It can be a square, a triangle, a circle. You follow these lines towards the center here. And now I have a three-dimensional object existing in that space. Delineation, going back away from the viewer. Now, for 2-point perspective, 2-point, I'm going to pick 2 vanishing points. It's like, finding nirvana and becoming nothingness twice. So I guess twice is good. 2-point perspective is really great if you're doing cityscapes, basically things with multiple angles, like something moving within space, different angles. When you're doing still lifes, you'll see it sometimes, but mainly I'm going to use something that's sort of a generic cityscape. So you find your 2 vanishing points. I'll make some lines coming off from it. All right, so we have these 2 vanishing points right here. I'm going to make a line right here in the center. And let's say this is like a street corner. So this coming off here follows back to this vanishing point, this, to this vanishing point, this, to this vanishing point, to this one. I think you get the idea. Now, if you were to have something like this is our horizon line. If you have something below the horizon line, you would see the top of it, right? If you have something above the horizon line, you would see the bottom of it. All of these lines follow back towards our 2 vanishing points. Finding where that one lives. And then if you were to put in windows, they would all follow along these same perspective lines. Put a little door in here. Sidewalks, streets, boom, boom, boom. And that is how perspective works. It's so fucking simple. You know what? Let's figure out how to use this for composition. So let's talk about composition. The last 2 drawings that we did, it's really good. The last 2 drawings that we did, when I said the word composition, I was like, we just want to find where it lives on the page so that it sits in the center and we can view it. So that's really easy and a common way to attack it. I'm going to talk about 4 different compositional elements, setups, kind of ways to build drawings, and that way next time you're like, oh, I want to draw this, whatever. It could be a group of flowers, it could be people on the street, whatever you're drawing, you want to come at it with some basic planning. If you plan it, it's going to look dramatically better. So let's talk about what we've been doing, which is a center focus. So a center focus is when you put your main object, let's say a figure, right in the center. Typically with a center focus, you would have the horizon line right in the middle, and then you utilize what's around it to draw information, to draw the viewer's eye in towards that center focus. So if you had, a fence over here or something, everything moves in towards that object right here in the center. Another trick with the center focus is people start looking at an image, this is flip for you, at the top left, just like you're reading a page. So when you enter a drawing or a painting, when you first view it, you automatically kind of scan it from the top down. So what I would say is less information up here more down here, and that's how you're going to get the viewer to gravitate towards that center focus. A lot of people don't know this, but I also studied photography before painting and ended up getting a degree in both. And one of the biggest things in photography is a rule of thirds. And I mean, it goes through everything: painting, drawing, anything visual, interior design. A rule of thirds, splitting things into thirds. So when you go to make a composition, rule of thirds, you can break the page into thirds. These are not equal, but you get the point. So typically you would make your horizon line probably in the bottom third. That just like gives a good visual weight, and it allows depth to activate a little bit easier. So what you would do is have most of your content sitting around this area and existing in thirds. So we're talking about thirds and thirds. This is going to give whatever image you're working on a little more strength, a little more weight, and just make the viewer feel more pleasing. It's pleasing to the eye. I think it's pretty much a tool that you'll see used over and over again. A repetition of 3 objects, odd numbers. So this one, this is a secret of a really good composition. Now there's something that you can do after you get this basically in place. Let's say you want something to focus on the background and not the foreground, or vice versa. I call this, contrast or depth of field. They kind of work the same way. So I'm just going to dump them together. I'm going to call it contrast depth. And what I'm talking about there is, so we found our horizon line, right? And let's say you have like a little cactus back here, and then you have like a cowboy closer to the camera in the foreground. He's been riding his horse. There's a horse on a cowboy. Now right now it's kind of confusing where they're at, what's going on in space. So what I would do is something I've been doing a ton. Contrast is I would shadow out around our object here. By using contrast, I'm telling people this is what they should be looking at: our rugged cowboy here in the foreground. Now, by using depth of field, if we're talking about a drawing, either it's not defining something in the background or foreground, making it fuzzy or making it softer. You're pushing the focus. So what I always do is by depth of field, I'll add more detail on the thing that I want the focus to be on. So this guy doesn't have a lot of detail right now, and if I start detailing up the cactus and putting other stuff around it, and I end up just kind of making him all a mid-tone, all of a sudden the focus starts to go back into space on this other object. The eye is drawn to here, less about what's in the foreground here. So you can reverse it very easily by adding detail, adding contrast, and that's oh, this is the shit I want to look at. Let me make another of these. The last thing I want to talk about is asymmetry. A for effort. Symmetry. Basically, what we're talking about is, you have this rule of thirds, and it's very pleasant, and it's sitting there. Or you have something in the center. You have things equal. Like if there's an object on one side, you put an object on the other side. This gives you this cohesive, fun, soft, everything feels nice and balanced. Now when you force that balance off, then you give an uneasiness to a drawing. So if you were doing something dramatic, maybe what you do is, instead of your horizon line being straight across, you tilt it. So now your horizon line is at an angle. You move your vanishing point to the side, and let's say you have another figure that you put here, and instead of all of their features being centered, you put a mouth off to one side. You kind of like make things uneven. Same thing with like other things back in space. They're moving in to this line here. By having more content on one side, shifting the horizon line, just sort of breaking all the rules that are typically used that are established. Like this is how a painting or drawing is supposed to be composed. Then you're telling the viewer, you're telling them something's dissident, something's mixed up. This is not the way it's supposed to be. With these little tricks, they're so simple. You can have so much more fun. Fundamentals. You can have so much more fun just drawing. You throw these into any drawing, all of a sudden it's going to look better. It's going to feel better. You're going to be happier about it. You're going to be happier about your life. Also, if you're drinking while you're doing it, you're probably going to be happier about life anyway. I know that I am drinking a lot, and I'm feeling very happy. If you like what you see, if you like what you learn, if you like what's going on, email me ideas, tips. I'll do whatever. I'm very bored right now. And then also, feel free to leave a tip because I ain't making no money. This has been Tad Franklin and Drunk Drawing, and see y'all next week.